So okay friends, we are moving to the last section of the classes, that is economies and diseconomies of scale. Now what is economies of scale? Economies of scale refers to the method in which the firm derives maximum benefit when large scale production is undertaken. That means if we go to a printing press, one print may cost you 10 rupees, but 1000 print may cost you only 150 rupees. So as you order in bulk, as you produce more, your price will be less. In the same way, in the companies also, if they produce more, their cost of production will be less. So in which the firm derives maximum benefit when the large scale production is undertaken. The economic scale has two connotations. First of all, in narrower sense, it refers to the increase in the productivity of the firm due to the expansion of its capacity. Economies of scale has two meanings in that sense. In narrow sense, it is that the productivity has increased. In the broader sense, it refers to all efforts made by a firm to minimize the cost of production. That means earlier if 10 biscuits were made in 5 rupees, now 20 biscuits can be made in 5 rupees. So they have brought down the cost of production. That is the actual sense. In narrow sense, we can say that the productivity increased, but in the broader sense, actually the cost of production has come down. So economies decrease in cost. Diseconomies increase in cost. So if you tell that there is economies, that means the cost has decreased. If you say that there is diseconomy, that means the cost has increased. Now, economies of scale can be divided into two: internal economies and external economies. Now what are internal economies and diseconomies? Expansion of the firm and its ability to produce more efficiently than other firms result in internal economies. That means when your firm is expansion and its ability has increased and become more efficient than the other firms, result in internal economies. Internal economies are economies which are available to individual firm when it expands its size of production. When the size of production increases, this is happening. Economies refer to decrease in cost of production. When cost increases due to expansion, it leads to internal diseconomies. So economies refers to decrease in the cost of production, as we told up. So when the cost increases, if 10 biscuits earlier it was produced in 5 rupees, now it is costing you 7 rupees to produce 10 biscuits. That means the cost has increased, and this actually leads to internal diseconomies. Now internal economies and diseconomies are as follows. First of all, labor economies and labor diseconomies. Now, labor economies are economies arising out of division of labor or specialization. Expansion of the scale of production of the firm reduces the labor cost through proper division of labor. So the cost of labor, if it comes down, we can tell that there is labor economies by specialization. If we bring down the cost that we are spending for labor, if it comes down, we can tell that there is labor economies. Economies of division of labor occurs due to dexterity of every particular worker and introduction of machines enabling one worker to do many works. That means we are decreasing the amount spent on labor. Cost of production decreases due to skill, efficiency and productivity of labor. If one labor is capable of making 10 biscuits, then we need not put in 5 more laborers. If suppose one labor is not skilled in making 10 biscuits, we have to put in 4 more people to, we may want 5 laborers to work for making 10 biscuits. But if one labor is enough to make, a person is skilled, that means we need to pay only one labor. So the other 4 laborers can be removed. So this is what is labor economies. Now labor diseconomies arise due to increase in labor cost or labor unrest. Second, technical economies and diseconomies. The economies arising from the use of machines and scientific techniques are called as technical economies. That means when the technology is increasing, the cost we are spending on technology will come down. We can get better production, or higher amount can be produced by lower cost of production because we have higher technology. Reduction in the cost of manufacturing process itself results in technical economies. The large firms make use of big or indivisible capital. When production is carried on a large scale, full utilization of the capital or of plant and machineries reduces the cost of production. Now, Professor Karen Cross distinguishes between three types of technical economies. First of all, economies of superior techniques, economies of increased dimension, economies of linked process. Now, what are they? During its expansion, a big firm can install highly sophisticated and adopts highly superior techniques of production. It results in economies of increased dimension. It can increase dimension by arranging production activities in a continuous sequence. It is possible to reap the benefits of linked process. So we have two this thing, economies of superior techniques. If we during the expansion of a big firm can install highly sophisticated machines and adopts highly superior techniques of production. The highly superior techniques of production is being used. It results in the economies of increased dimension. If big machines are being installed, highly superior machines are involved, and then it is producing, resulting in greater production, then it results in economy increased dimension. By arranging production activities in a continuous sequence, like if the production is happening in a continuous sequence, what we get is the possibility to reap the benefits of linked process. So that is what Kane Cross is actually trying to. A big firm can also derive another technical economy by using its byproducts. So that is not very important over here. We move to the third one. That is managerial economies and diseconomies. First one was labor economies and diseconomies. Second was technical economies and diseconomies. Third is managerial economies and diseconomies. The advantages derived from the efficient management are called as managerial economies. Usually, efficiency of the management increases with an increase in the size of the firm. So, when the size of the firm increases, managerial efficiency increases. Expansion of the firm permits for the utilization of specialized managerial personnel. Better coordination, higher efficiency reduces the cost of production. If you are efficient manager, you will be able to bring down the cost of production. So, this leads to managerial economies. Thus, an expanding firm enjoys greater managerial economies. But complexities and problems of the management increases along with the expansion of the firm. There is a limit to human capacity. A further expansion of business becomes unmanageable and uneconomical once the normal capacity of the management is exhausted. So, then it will lead to managerial diseconomies. Fourth one, marketing economies and diseconomies. The fourth one, economies arising out of purchase of inputs and sale of outputs are called marketing economies. The expansion of the firm increases the bargaining power. If the firm is becoming big, it increases its bargaining power. It enables a firm to secure some benefits in its purchase and sales. A large scale firm claims certain advantage in nature of price concessions in loading and unloading charges, concession in transporting. Besides, it can profitably invest in sales promotion activities such as advertisement, salesmanship. All this results in marketing economies. Now, expansion of the firm increases when its bargaining power is actually increasing of a firm. When you become a big firm, your bargaining power increases, and when your bargaining power increases, you can have some benefits in purchases and sales. You can bargain with the purchasing people and also the seller, and you can get a gain. This gain is called as marketing economies. Extent of market is an important limitation to the scale of production. So, if the market is not big, the scale of production also cannot be big. If the demand for the product is limited, large scale production will not be beneficial. When the firm expands, demand for inputs increases, which ultimately increases the input price. This causes an increase in production cost. Besides, expansion of the firm of an industry increases the total production. If the effective demand does not respond equally, price of the products bound to decrease. All this results in marketing diseconomies. Fifth one, financial economies and diseconomies. The benefits derived from a firm in the money market because of its size and reputation are called as financial economies. So, whatever economies you are receiving in the money market, that means bank, financial institution, stock, etc., called as financial economies. A large firm is always in a better position to command credit at comparatively liberal rates because of its size. If the firm is large, you can always demand command credit at a comparative size, at the size or the rates that you want. So you are always in a good position. That's financial economies. On the other hand, if you are not big enough, the big business firm always needs huge amount of capital. If the required capital is not available in time, it may have to undergo some problems which results in increase in the cost. So whenever whatever marketing problems that leads to increase in the cost of production, it is called as diseconomies, and when it leads to a reduction in the cost, it's called as a marketing economies. So that is about the market economies. Now sixth one, risk spreading economies and diseconomies. Economies arising out of diversification of the process of production and marketing are called as risk spreading economies. A big firm which manufactures many products can make good the loss in one product by selling another product more efficiently. It is possible to a business firm to diversify its production activities without incurring additional cost. Diversification spreads the risk. If you have more than one commodity being produced in the market, then what happens? You can, even if one product is going loss, you can spread the risk of this loss into the other products and then gain profit from that product. So that is called as spreading the risk. They can spread through diversification of outputs, diversification of markets, diversification of sources of supply, and diversification of the process of manufacturing. Sometimes risk spreading economies come in conflict with managerial and technical economies. When the size of the firm extends, risk also increases. An error of judgment or misfortune in business will result in heavy loss. So, it is natural part of businessmen to express their unwillingness to bear greater risk. Even a small error in diversification process will lead to risk spreading diseconomies. So these are the internal economies and diseconomies: risk spreading economies, financial economies and diseconomies, marketing economies and diseconomies, managerial economics and diseconomies, technical economies and diseconomies, and labor economies and diseconomies. Now, let's come to the external economies and diseconomies. External economies are the advantages enjoyed by all the firm due to external factor. Now, the internal one was individual or very exclusive to one firm. So, what is happening within the firm, it was important. Now, this is something that is happening outside the firm. This external economies are happening outside of the firm. So, outside of the firm. Now, that is common to all the firms that are existing in a particular territory or a country. According to Professor S.E. Thomas, external economies are those which arise from localization of industry and are at the disposal of all firms in the same industry. Now, this affects all the industries that are in, for example, now COVID, lockdown has come. Education sector, diseconomies, or this has happened throughout all the private education sectors. So that is what it is: external diseconomies or economies. So external economies can be divided into three: concentration, information, and disintegration. Now, economies and diseconomies of concentration. The advantages arising due to localization of business firms are called as economies of concentration. Now, how much localized a firm is, out of that some benefits arises for a firm from the locality, from the external factor, that is locality. This is called as economies or diseconomies of concentration. When several firms concentrate in a single neighborhood, they enable each other to derive mutual advantage through the training institutions and development of infrastructure. Development of infrastructure implies improved transport system, growth of banking system, services, marketing services, easy availability of men and material, better means of communication, and the like. It is easy to make arrangement for repairs, maintenance, and special services. So you can see there might in some areas there might be continuously shops of same like cloth. In some areas there might be only cloth shops. So this is actually concentration. This is actually achieving economies of concentration. That means a dealer who is coming to sell the cloth to a particular shop need not come for that particular shop alone. can come for 10 shops that are in that local area itself, and this will bring down the purchase cost of a particular firm or a particular shop. So in that way the person can achieve better cost. So concentration of firms in a definite locality increases the competition also among them in getting the necessary inputs. It increases the input price. So when that is happening, it leads to diseconomies of concentration. Now because of concentration there is also uses, at the same time there is also misuse, negative impacts are there. This is called as diseconomies. Now economies and diseconomies of information. The advantages arising from the information network are called as economies of information. If the information is available to all, that this is going to happen in the market. So that is called as economies and diseconomies of information. Information regarding experiments, researches and empirical studies are usually published in bulletins and journals. Such information provides knowledge about modern developments in business world, modern technology, inventions and innovations, market trends and the like. It is easy to establish a common information bureau when the firms are concentrated in a locality. Sometimes the government bears the cost of information and research services, and benefits are shared by the industries. All this results in economies of information, resulting in the decrease in the production cost. So that is what is economies of information. In the absence of common information bureau and the government assistance, it results in diseconomies of information. If you don't get the necessary information, it results in diseconomies of information. Now economies and diseconomies of disintegration. The benefits derived from disintegration of production process are called as economies of disintegration. All the process of production need not be carried out by a single firm. The whole process can be disintegrated or can be spread to different firms, and each one can be entrusted to specialized firms. All the internal economies of large scale production can be attained when the production process is split up and performed on a large scale by specialist firms. This decreases the cost of production. Moreover, a large industry can make use of waste materials for manufacturing byproducts. It results in economies of byproducts. When the production process is disintegrated, mutual dependence of the firms increases. If any problem arises in one firm, it will become the problem of the entire industry. This results in diseconomies of disintegration. So that is what the internal and the external economies of scale are. Let's go to the next topic, that is capital budgeting. Now what is capital budgeting? Capital budgeting is a process of conceiving, generating, evaluating and selecting the least cost, most profitable projects for investing the available funds. It is also known as long-term investment decision. Capital budgeting is actually a long-term investment decision that happens for a company. Also, you take a long-term decision of how much capital is required, which involves finance and also the machineries which are required for a long term. It's called as capital budgeting. Capital budgeting is another name to long-term investment decision. It is concerned with planning and control of capital expenditure. Capital expenditure refers to conversion of current funds for future returns in the long run. It is defined as a decision of the firm to invest its current finances most efficiently in long-term productive activities with expectation of future benefits over a long period. So it is a most important part, because every firm requires a long-term investment. It requires a long-term investment, and to the extent that it is able to make long-term investment creatively or profitably, you can achieve this thing. Capital budgeting can be profitable. Yeah. So in short, capital budgeting is concerned with designing and carrying through a systematic investment program. It consists of projects for acquisition of new capital assets and estimated cost of each project. Capital budgeting, what it is? Now it's actually a tabular format of what we have studied. Now what is a capital budgeting? It's a process of conceiving, generating, evaluating and selecting. So these 4 points are important. It's conceiving, generating, evaluating and selecting profitable project. Now what it involves? Now what results in it? Now it involves expansion of firm, replacement of equipment, choice of equipment, acquisition of building through purchase or lease basis. How to acquire building through purchase or lease basis. Now nature of, that is what the nature of capital budgeting is. The capital budgeting essentially is a list of what management believes to be worthwhile projects for the acquisition of new capital assets together with estimated cost of each projects. So where should the finance actually go and where should the finance actually stay in the longer run? That is what is capital budgeting. Now let's move on to some definitions are there that you can just go through of different people. Features of capital budgeting. On the basis of the above definition, the features are: 1. Overall development objective is there. So the first feature is in the capital budgeting refers to expansion, replacement, modernization, investment, diversification, all these things here. So an overall development of the firm is the first major objective or the feature of the capital budget. Second, it involves investment programs. Of course, capital budgeting is a long-term investment, as we told. So it involves investment program. It refers to the complete process of generating, evaluating, selecting and following up. So it's a long-term investment program is there. Third, selecting profitable investments. So it's not simply investing, but capital budgeting, when we do, we are actually selecting the profitable investment. Which investment is more profitable to us or for the company that is being selected. Long term, it is actually for a long term, it's not a short term investment. Risk and capital budgeting, since is for of long run in nature, involves risks and uncertainties. Facing them is the asset test to a manager. For example, we put money in some business for next 5 years. If that is not running nicely, there is risk and uncertainty. So that is actually asset test for the manager. Problem of selection. How to select the best project is also an important problem of the managerial decision making. Selection or rejection. If sufficient capital is not available, then either selecting or rejecting a particular project is the only one simple problem involved in capital budgeting. Efficient allocation. Now we have to efficiently allocate the capital. If we have 5 crore rupees, if that project has required only 2 crore, you cannot put in 3 crore or 4 crore into that. So efficiently allocating the capital is also important thing. Experience based. Capital budgeting requires a service of skilled and experienced personnel as it is committed for long term service. Now what is the importance or the need of capital budgeting? Capital budgeting is very important in business decisions. First of all, what is the use? First of all, future profitability. The future will be profitable. Second, it's a long period. It depends for a long period. So it is very much important. Adequate return. In order to ensure adequate rate of return or investment, a proper mix of capital investment is of very much important. Hence, there is a need of capital budgeting. Risk and uncertainties. Long-term investment decision involve higher degree of risk and uncertainty. In the absence of capital budgeting, the firm may incur losses. If you don't plan it correctly, what will happen? It will incur losses. So the capital budgeting becomes one of the most important areas of managerial decision making. So now what results in the need for capital budgeting arises because capital budgeting helps in formulating a specific plan. It comes with assistance in coordinating the activities of various departments of the firm. It considers the variation and deviation between the plan and the achievements. It assists to optimize the firm's resources. It identifies the anomalies and helps to take corrective action. So these are the needs why capital budgeting is important. Capital budgeting decisions are necessarily taken in the following cases. First of all, when do we need a capital budgeting decision? First of all, in expansion, if you want to expand, capital budgeting is required. If you want to replace an existing equipment or machinery, capital budgeting is required. Choice of equipment, what kind of equipment is required? Because equipments we don't buy every year. It's done for 5 years, 10 years or 20 years. So what kind of choice of equipment? Capital budgeting is required. Buy or lease, whether we have to buy the machineries or we can lease it for 20 years, that is also important. So capital budgeting is required there also. Opinions of different economists are there, but we go to the prerequisites of capital budgeting. Capital budgeting makes use of certain concepts. They are called as prerequisites of capital budgeting. First of all, they are capital expenditure. Capital expenditure refers to the decision-making procedure involved in long-term investment of the business firm. The first task in capital budgeting is finding out whether the expenditure is profitable or not. Capital expenditure ignores the adjustable short-term expenditures like inventors and receivables. Capital expenditure needs careful planning as it involves uncertainty in forecasting and judgment. Capital budgeting includes following 5 items. First of all, expenditure of new capital equipment or creation of long-term assets by a new firm. Second, expenditure on expansion of diversification of assets and addition to the existing capital stock. Third one, expenditure on replacement of depreciated capital. Fourth, expenditure on advertisement which bear fruits over time. Fifth, expenditure on research, development and innovation. Second, planning period. Now why it is required? We are looking at prerequisites. Second is planning period. Determination of the span of planning period is the next important aspect of capital budgeting. Correct knowledge of the planning period is inevitable. Now why do we want a planning period? First of all, for effective planning, its execution and control, possible detailing of old plan and with new one for future integrated development of the company, assessment of economies of scale and determination of plan size. Fourth, financial planning and timely acquisition of necessary finances. So for that, the planning period is required. Second, decision rules. Now how you have to take a decision? First of all, they are framed on the following basis. Objectives of the firm such as profit, asset management, building and maximization of gains. Present value of discounted cash flow, net present worth, internal rate of return, payback rates. So all these are required for making a correct decision, Fourth, collection of necessary data. This is the fourth step in capital budgeting. Relevant and necessary data collection is the prerequisites of capital budgeting. The following data are needed for successful capital budgeting. First of all, cost of capital projects. Second, expected rate of return, availability of alternative projects, period of fruition, maturity and overall longevity of alternative projects, market rate of interest, degree of uncertainty. So all these things have to be collected. These are data that needs to be collected while doing a capital budgeting. Now what are the stages of capital budgeting? There are 6 important steps. First of all, search for new investment opportunity. You have to go and search where a new investment opportunity is there. Second, forecasting changes in cash flow that will occur from each investment. Suppose we are taking up a new investment project. So how much change of cash flow will happen? That is second one. Third one, determining the method of computing the cost of capital, which will take into account the availability of funds. Fourth, determining the method of converting the changes in future cash flows into a common unit that will reflect the discontinuing principle. Fifth, selecting most profitable investment and then conducting post audit of the results pertaining to various investment. Now steps involved in capital budgeting decision can be shown in the chart. Stages of capital budgeting: project generation, project evaluation, project selection and project execution. Now in evaluation stage we are looking into cash flow estimates and selection of appraisal method. In appraisal method again we have 3 things that we take care of: risk, the return and the opportunity. Return, we have trade-offs, market position of the company. So this is what the entire stages of capital budget, 6 stages of capital budgeting are so and so. I hope you have understood. Any doubts in this case you can just call up and ask. The capital budgeting process. As we saw in the chart itself, the capital budgeting process are first project generation. Generation involves proposals, how to generate add new products to the company or new marketplaces to the company. Project evaluation involves estimation of benefits and costs. You are evaluating a project by technique. Project selection is a functional management to select. Now finally many projects are there. From that you evaluate each project. From that you select one project and then you execute the project in the final stage, project execution. The success of the capital budgeting depends on the proper execution. The ability of the management lies in executing the project successfully. Cost of execution should be minimum and the return from the project should be maximum. So that is how we can get a better capital budgeting. So here we come to an end of the first chapter. Go through all the 8 titles which we have discussed. If you have any doubt, there is a summary. Summary is also given in the last section of the textbook. If anyone wants the pic of that summary, I can send it to you. If you have the already textbook, then you can go through the summary, go through the titles, go through the question and answers, and then we'll meet back with the new chapter. Thank you.